Hello and welcome back to the Hope House YouTube channel. I'm Chris and I'm your host. So in the previous episodes, the first episode we covered what it is Hope House does, and in the second episode we covered what to kind of expect from your first session. So today's episode, I kind of want to talk about what can we do after you've made your appointment. So let's say if you are using Hope House, for example, because we're nonprofit, one of the things that you do run into is there is quite a waiting list, which can be from a few days to 3 weeks, right? Depending on site and availability of counselors, so on and so forth. So let's say you've made your appointment and your appointment is only in a week. So what is there that you can do that would be not only of benefit for tiding you over until then, but it's also something that's going to assist the counselor and kind of, so how can we get you into the counseling room with some momentum, is technically what I'm saying. So there are some valuable metrics, especially when it comes to the field of psychology. One of the biggest ones is sleep. Are you getting adequate sleep? Right? Are you getting 7 hours, 8 hours, 9 hours, or are you getting 3 hours and then awake and then 2 hours and then awake? Like what is your sleep, your average sleep? Well, how much is that? And then, do you have a sleep routine? That's quite a big thing. As in, do you go to sleep at 10 p.m. and you wake up at 7? That's great, that's phenomenal. And do you do this every night? Or do you go to sleep at like 3 in the morning some nights, and then 8 p.m. on other nights, and then 1 and 12, and you kind of just fall asleep at whatever time? These are important things to have, because often mood is so strongly associated just with the amount of sleep that you are getting. So one of the things can be just aiming for adequate sleep. So aim for at least 7 hours. If you want to read up more or just even look up on YouTube for more information with regards to sleep and its importance, Dr. Matthew Walker is a very, very good resource. He is very knowledgeable, as he's a neuroscientist specializing in sleep. Okay, so the other thing is your eating habits. Are you eating a lot? Are you not eating? Are you eating mostly junk food? Because this is one of the things that, especially if we're looking at depressive symptoms, is we'll often lean towards junk food because it's highly dopaminergic. It gives like a bit of a buzz and then it just dies out, right? So your eating habits. Listen, this is not something to be ashamed of. You know, if your mental health is suffering, we often try to eat to like self-medicate in a sense, okay? If you're on any medications, it's important to jot them down. Jot them down with dosage, just so that even though your counselor might not be highly aware of what medication is and how it works, you might end up with a nerd like myself who studied physiology and genetics as well, and has quite a fair understanding of pharmacology. So that is always of benefit, it's always useful, and especially with Hope House on your intake form, we're going to ask you which drugs you are prescribed, if you are prescribed drugs. So another thing you can do is you can use a scale, right, to kind of log what your days are like. So a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being best day ever, like a day that was just fantastic, everything worked out. And then a 1 being like, this is possibly the worst day of my life, right? So 1 is like, it couldn't have been any worse. Okay? So you just kind of scale. So you see, on average, are you 3? Are you 5? Are you 4? Are you 7? Like, where are you falling on the scale? And this is quite important, right? Because I can't speak for all counselors, but I can speak to myself. One of the things I usually ask my clients is, where are you on the scale, physically and emotionally? Is your body feeling good and your mind like feeling sad? Well, on a scale of 1 to 10, where are we? And whatever your answer is, we need to ask, well, let's say your answer is a 3, right? So what does a 4 look like? What would a 7 look like? What would your 10 look like? And is that even attainable in a fairly short time period? So scaling, fantastic. If you can do that and you can bring that in with you, because if a counselor asks you, like, how was your week? Or, how are you doing? And you say, well, I've been struggling a lot this week. And, oh, what happened? Because you're stressed, it's understandable that people do tend to forget. So if you can show up with your scaling for the day and kind of what events stood out on the day, that's very helpful. It's also very helpful for you, right? Because now you get to keep track of how much of this is me and how much of this is co-workers or just, being end of the month and not having enough money, right? Whatever it could be. But it's a very useful way for you to kind of just keep an eye on what some of the causes might be. So these are all the things you can come to the session with, and that's very useful for your counselor, right? But I also want to discuss some things to tide you over until then. And I want these to be things that you can implement from today all the way through your whole counseling session, or not session, your whole counseling journey, and hopefully these become habits that you kind of maintain over time. First thing, journaling, right? I am a massive proponent of journaling. I usually prescribe it to all my clients as well. I'm not going to go into depth of how you journal and how to journal effectively, as I think this would be a better episode for like the next episode. Like, we can do a full deep dive into journaling, how to do it effectively, what the point is. So, and kind of how to journal for like self-improvement, right? But journaling is, in my opinion, a phenomenal tool and skill if you have it, right? I prefer you write by hand, and there's a lot of evidence supporting that there are stronger cognitive benefits when it comes to writing by hand, but I'm not going to force you to do that. If you want to type, you can type. If you want to put it on your notes app, that's fine. But if you want to get the full benefit, start writing. Okay. The next thing is we have to start creating a self-care menu, right? So how does this work? We need to accept on the days where mentally we're in a good space, we have a lot of energy, we can do the things we set out to do. On other days, when our mental health isn't necessarily where we want it to be, we often have much less energy as well. And that's your body trying to it's trying to protect you, right? In a sense, it wants to conserve energy because we don't know if a lion might pop out and we need to run. Okay? So if you're interested in how that works, polyvagal theory is a very good explanation on how your body is also giving you signals, right? So the self-care menu, it's quite a simple concept. It's based on polyvagal theory, which I've just mentioned, as well as spoon theory. The spoon theory is just this concept of how many, so if you have a jar, let's say a jar of sugar, right? That's your energy for the day. How many spoons of sugar do you have in that jar for the day? So that's your energy for the day. If you are in a very good space, you might have 20 spoons of sugar in your jar. If you're not in the best space, you might only have 3 or 4. Okay? So your self-care menu needs to kind of accommodate for that. Right? So similar to a menu, you have your appetizers and then your main and your desserts. So on the days where we are a 3 on the scale, we might only be able to do appetizers. And that's okay. Right? But if you're a 10 on the scale, everything from appetizers to desserts, it's all there. So the idea with this is you need to pick small things that you can do for yourself that you find nourishing. Your appetizers part is going to be things in or around the house. right? So you have no excuse for not being able to do that, right? So this can be as simple as having a cup of coffee or tea at the window in the sun if the sun's available, right? Or if it's raining, listening to the rain. A small moment just to kind of reset everything. Okay. So your main meals and things, that's when we start looking at where we can go out and do things. We can go out for a run or for a cycle, or we can go explore. And then desserts are the high value things, like climbing Table Mountain, etc. The reason why we have to kind of scale this between low energy cost and high energy cost is often, and we see this with seasonal depression, we see this a lot, is these are individuals who tend to have their self-care routines be things that are high demand, high energy, and the weather needs to play along. Those people who cycle, who run, who swim. But the moment that's taken away from them, they struggle because now they're not taking care of themselves and they get frustrated and angry and all of that. So you need to have a set of small things, medium things, large things. If you are, let's say you are a 3 on the scale, but one of your favorite things to do is to climb Table Mountain. Great. It's a very enriching experience and everything. The problem is, if your mental health is not where it needs to be to do that, it's too easy to say no. Because I need to drive to Table Mountain. Probably going to sit in traffic. I need to climb up Table Mountain and back down, back in the car, which is probably hot from standing in the sun all day. Stuck in traffic yet again, and I'm only going to get home by 6. And now I need to make food, and everything is just chaos. So that's why you need to have the small things as well. And you need to appreciate the small things, right? So if you say, one of the things I love to do is to listen to a podcast and have a bath, for example. Set time out to do that. At first, it might not seem like it's this massive influence, but it's more the habit of setting time out for yourself throughout the day. And it's like, this I want to do purely for the reason that I want to enjoy this, and this is for me. Right? So if you're someone who gives a lot, and you give and you give and you give, eventually you're running on empty, and you need to then take time for yourself. So having these like micro habits that you can instill and you can value becomes quite big. So once again, if we just look back at journaling and the benefit of that, to me, it's the act of sitting down, making time in your day to write about how you are doing. That's why it's so beneficial. But we'll get into that in a different episode. The other thing is, I want you to treat yourself like someone you're responsible for taking care of. Okay? So often depression is described as the big black dog, right? And it's quite common. And it's quite a fitting description, really, because it can be very intimidating and it can be quite persistent. Anyone who has a dog knows that at times they can be pretty damn persistent. But like all dogs, that black dog called depression needs to be walked. If it's dirty, it needs to be washed. It needs to be fed a proper diet. So even that's like just basic care, which we take for granted a lot of the time. So in treating yourself as someone you're taking care of, that's often a concept that helps a lot of people, especially if it's mothers or fathers, brothers, uncles, whatever, where the idea is, let's say you're not really in the mood to go to bed, but your child's struggling to sleep and doesn't have a fixed routine. You would want them to establish a routine, right? So that's kind of the concept we're going for here. Another one is the idea of the 1% rule. Right, so the 1% rule, it's not a new idea by any stretch of the imagination. It's quite an old concept. But the idea is, tomorrow I want to be 1% better than I was today. Right? That's it. That's the goal. And then the day after that, I want to be 1% better than the day before. So you want to start kind of just aiming small. It can literally be the smallest things, and that's okay. That's not a problem. Because we want to tie multiple mini victories along the way so that we have this habit of improvement. But we don't have a habit of aiming for the moon and the stars, and now we keep shifting the goalpost of what we deem necessary. Right? So it's a lot better to be in a position where you don't have to become a tyrant to yourself either, right? And 1% doesn't seem like much, but over 3 months, it's a 90% improvement from where you are today. Quite a big thing, right? It's a 90% improvement is a life-changing improvement. So I think for the next episode, it would be quite useful if we discuss journaling and how to journal effectively for self-improvement. I can walk you through the skill. If there's any questions that you guys have with regards to any habits or topics that you would want to explore, just pop it down there in the comments. If you like what we're doing at Hope House and you want to support us, by all means, you can just visit the website that's linked in the description. And then just for the rest of the week, be kind to yourself. Don't be too hard on yourself.